The podcast begins by discussing the stark contrast between the Democratic and Republican parties, with the Republican Party unified behind Donald Trump in extraordinary ways. Shapiro then delves into Trump's triumphant presentation as the Republican nominee for the third consecutive time, describing it as an extraordinary political feat. He notes that the RNC has focused on building out the Trump coalition and providing permission structures for people who historically have not voted Republican to support Trump. He mentions a vibe shift in the United States, with many people who previously wouldn't have considered voting for Trump now openly expressing their support. The podcast highlights Trump's recent 4-week period as the best of any presidential candidate, noting his debate performance against Biden and his decision to stay out of the spotlight while Biden faced criticism. Shapiro also mentions the assassination attempt against Trump, praising his physical bravery in the aftermath. The RNC is described as a unity convention, featuring a wide variety of people from left to right. Shapiro notes that there's little agreement among Republicans on many issues, but they are united by discontent with the left wing and support for Donald Trump. The convention's final night included a surprise appearance by Hulk Hogan, which Shapiro describes as great showmanship, albeit a bit silly. The podcast then focuses on Trump's acceptance speech, describing the first 15 to 20 minutes as some of the best Trump performances ever. Shapiro praises Trump's subdued tone and his discussion of the assassination attempt, calling it an incredible display. However, he criticizes the speech for its length, 93 minutes, and for going off teleprompter, which led to a loss of momentum. Shapiro argues that the speech was a missed opportunity to put the race out of reach for the Democrats. He suggests that if Trump had stuck to the first 20 minutes and added a brief critique of his opponent's policies and his own plans, it could have been one of the great campaign speeches in history. The podcast plays excerpts from Trump's speech, including his call for unity and his recounting of the assassination attempt. Shapiro praises these portions, calling them effective and fascinating. He also commends Trump's tribute to Corey Comparado, the man killed by a bullet meant for Trump, describing it as a great moment. However, Shapiro criticizes the latter portion of the speech, where Trump veered into discussing his grievances against the Democratic Party and the justice system. He argues that this shift in tone was not politically astute and detracted from the unifying message of the earlier part of the speech. The podcast then shifts focus to the Democratic Party, discussing the possibility of Joe Biden stepping down as the nominee. Shapiro describes this as potentially the biggest untold story of the election, noting that it would be unprecedented for a candidate to win the nomination and then be forced by his own party to step out. Shapiro cites various reports and rumors suggesting that Biden might withdraw from the race, possibly as soon as the upcoming weekend. He mentions that top Democrats, including Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer, have reportedly expressed concerns about Biden's ability to win against Trump. The podcast discusses the potential implications of Biden stepping down, including the possibility of an open convention. Shapiro speculates about potential candidates who could step in, including Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, and others. He notes that Harris is already reportedly vetting potential running mates, but also mentions that she is widely seen as a weak candidate. Shapiro notes that Trump has had an exceptionally good month politically, but cautions that his polling numbers, while improved, are not overwhelmingly dominant. He suggests that the race remains competitive and that systemic variables, such as media coverage and voting rules in certain states, will play a significant role. Shapiro also discusses the potential impact of a Biden withdrawal on key swing states. He cites polling data suggesting that Kamala Harris might perform better than Biden in some states, but worse in others. He emphasizes the uncertainty surrounding these scenarios and the potential for rapid shifts in the political landscape. The podcast touches on the media's coverage of both the Republican National Convention and the potential Democratic Party shakeup. Shapiro criticizes MSNBC for what he sees as biased and hyperbolic coverage, particularly highlighting comments from Joy Reid and Rachel Maddow.